So, I get more on what people can do.
Yeah, I think it's important that people have to realise if we want to make a change, then we have to be the change we want to see.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many different ways to get information out to people. Obviously, using social media is one. Going out into the streets with flyers is a useful way, because you will meet people who you might not otherwise meet, and it's a form of information where you have the opportunity to explain a little bit for a minute or two, and they can walk away, think about it, and then research what you've shared on your flyer. And everyone can make a flyer.
And you will make mistakes, and some people will correct you, and then you go, oh, okay, and then you can go back and check that out for yourself.
Yeah.
And the other thing I'd like to mention is that you really shouldn't look for leaders or groups or organizations or politicians or media companies to do anything. There is a very powerful, there's an enormous power behind this program, and it is quite easy to make sure that leadership of organizations won't talk about it. One example that I like to use quite often is Greenpeace. You'd think they'd be concerned about the environment, and in fact earlier this year Greenpeace UK put out a press release or statement asking people to stop sending them pictures of chemtrails because it's an urban myth, you're all crazy, it's wacky conspiracy theory, don't believe it, it's just water vapor, stop sending us stuff. But you should remember that there are two of the sources of funding for geoengineering are the Gates Foundation and the Carnegie Foundation. They both fund Greenpeace and plus all the other green organizations. And if they were to say, oh, it's going on, the Gates Foundation and Carnegie Foundation who say, oh, no, it's just something we propose in the future, that funding would dry up.
And the stakeholder partners. Greenpeace are stakeholder partners in the Solar Radiation Management Governance Initiative, which is a non-NGO set up by the British government, essentially.
And solar radiation management is another name for geoengineering. And one of the things they discuss at these conferences is, oh yeah, if one country wants to do it, another one doesn't, we need to set up a global governance network, which leads into global government, which is something you don't want. So Greenpeace, they are still on. If you go to the Solar Radiation Management and Governance Initiative website, it's those initials.org, and go to partners, look under G, there's Greenpeace. Conspiracy theory, but they're part of it, of governing it.
And not only that, the co-founder of Greenpeace is a member of the Club of Rome.
Yeah, who said let's
it doesn't matter.
Global warming would fit the bill.
Yeah,
those guys.
That particular guy, I can't remember his name at the moment, but he said that it doesn't matter if global warming is real. It just matters what people believe is real.
Yeah.
Now, the thing is about Greenpeace, for example, they are one of the many groups that are being enlisted by the system, by the establishment, to organise these climate activist demonstrations to demand to the governments that they start taking climate action. And this type of climate action they're talking about is the introduction of carbon tax, is the introduction of climate action plans, is the introduction of geoengineering to combat global warming. They basically are co-opting well-meaning people, because many people who are members of Greenpeace obviously do care about the planet and do care about the environment, but they are being manipulated to support programs that will further damage the environment. Like geoengineering will shift the monsoon winds so many developing countries in Asia will endure more droughts as a consequence of geoengineering. So
and the
Greenpeace are being asked to demand climate action plans, demand that we get this United Nations climate treaty, which is just the beginning of a whole raft of measures to transform society towards this one world government system.
And there's like 500 laws?
500 new climate laws being implemented this year, 2015, which I have to say, last year when I talked to one of the steering committees of the Climate Engineering Conference in Berlin, he was unaware of these 500 new climate laws to be implemented in 66 nations, the key nations all around the world. Which I found very, very surprising, that one of these key climate scientists would be unaware of these 500 new climate laws, which is just an example of how people within the establishment themselves can be compartmentalized, where they're so focused on what they're particularly doing that they're unaware of the larger picture, which is in case much the same with people in Greenpeace. A lot of them are well-meaning people. They're focused on what they're doing. They don't see the bigger picture. And the ones at the top, the ones who are steering Greenpeace, are intimately linked with organisations like the Club of Rome, MI5, these intelligence organisations, because it's important to steer public opinion. They want the public to react in certain ways to these problems they've covertly created.
They're manufacturing consent.
Exactly. This is the purpose of all these big wildlife preservation groups like the World Wildlife Fund, Greenpeace, Friends of the Earth. All of these different types of organisations, I know there are many more, they're all set up to manufacture consent for these larger programs, which ultimately will revolve around the United Nations Agenda 21 program for the world. And they realise there will be opposition, because people don't really want changes, and they don't want changes that will be detrimental to their lifestyle. So they realise there would be opposition. So by setting up these groups and appearing, some of them do good things, some of the things they do are good, but overall their overall agenda is to manufacture public consent for these programs. So you have to be vigilant about that, and that's
and speaking of consent, the powers that be, I call them the scumbags, because
the powers that should not be,
for the powers that think they are. They only have power because we think they have. They're just. I mean, the United Nations is a private organisation. They're not elected. They were just set up, after the Second World War. No one voted for them. The same with the European Commission. They're just some guys that got appointed, but they have this thing about contract. They will not do anything without informed consent. They are duty bound to tell you what they're going to do, and if you don't say nope, I do not consent, they'll say, well, you didn't say no, so we'll take that as a yes.
Yes, implied consent.
Implied consent. So that's why when you look at books like Brave New World or 1984, when people say, wow, how did these authors know what was going to happen 50 years hence? Well, because there was an agenda, and they wanted to say, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, so we'll put it out there, and if nobody says, oh, we don't want this, that's consent. And they'll put stuff into science fiction movies and things, and then you'll think, oh, you're one of these crazy conspiracy theories, you're just believing something that is in a film.
It's fiction.
But if you look at Brave New World, Huxley in the 1930s is talking about genetic engineering, which was 20 years before Watson and Crick supposedly discovered DNA. So it's there's a and the links from, Orwell studied under Huxley at Eton or Oxford. Huxley was part of the Round Table groups. Wells was a Fabian. He was part of the Wells. And if you look at War of the Worlds, and they always tell you in advance. But anyway, the key thing is they need your consent. They need your consent either by silence or by saying yes. And I have come across people who have said yes, and I tell them, well, they're doing this to save us from global warming, and they think, well, that must be a good thing. I don't think it's terribly environmentally sound to spray poison in the atmospheres that supposedly prevent like half a degree of change in the temperature. And you should actually, when people call you, oh, you're a crazy conspiracy, or you're just one of these one of these chemtrail people, said, no, you're environmentalists. You actually care about the environment, and that's what we do. We care about humanity, life on Earth, and we want it to continue.
We want a free planet for everyone to enjoy.
Yeah, and it should. And a tiny minority shouldn't dictate how everybody lives.
The dominant minority, the psychopaths, the sociopaths, those that are willing to take us into illegal wars, decimate families,
poison the
for
food
generations.
supply.
Yeah, using depleted uranium when they shouldn't do. It's against the Geneva Convention. These people, the people that are asking us to believe them now, have committed horrific war crimes that are behind the troubles in Syria, that are behind the troubles in Libya, behind the troubles in Iraq, that are basically waging war left, right and centre on illegal premises, on no moral high ground. There is no honourable reason for these conflicts in the Middle East. This is all manufactured to break down the Islamic community in the Middle East because they want a new world order, and they have a problem. The Islamic religious framework is too strong,
and their families are too strong.
Yeah, and they don't believe in usury, and they don't believe in allowing someone to starve. And I'm not particularly religious, so I'm not trying to sell the religion of Islam as each individual choice. But I don't think that they're so bad. They've been radicalised by people from the West. In Iran before the 1953 CIA and MI6 coup attempt.
Most of that successful.
People were wearing normal clothes, so people were free in Iran, and same in Afghanistan even.
Yeah.
The people were living a normal everyday life like the rest of us, and it's only they reacted to these coup attempts. They reacted to having their nations attacked. And that created radicalism, and that has only served to create a division between the Sunnis and the Shiites. It's only served to create an image to the West of these radicals.
Oh, that they've always hated each other.
Divide and rule. And these are tactics and strategies, long-term strategies, to demonise the Islamic world because they want to fracture it. They want to weaken it, and they want to eventually create a one-world culture. Driven by Hollywood and gossip and the media. They want to actually homogenise the culture of the world.
Yeah.
And that would be a disaster for the world, when in fact we should be celebrating all the differences, all the different cultures and all the different heritage and all the different peoples of the world. We should be celebrating the fact that we are all different. It's a richness, it's a rich culture, a multifaceted culture that we should never lose. But they want that because then it becomes easier to control us.
And I'd also like to make a point that a lot of people who are new to horrendous crimes like this, they'll think, how could anybody be so evil to want to poison the entire planet, start a war, do something that will lead to the deaths of millions in whatever way? That just doesn't compute, because if I was at your apartment barefoot and I was walking through the living room and I stubbed my toe on your coffee room table, you will wince, because you are a normal human being with empathy. You feel other people's pain. It's just that's how we evolved as a species. But there is a disorder known as psychopathy. So there's sociopaths and psychopaths, which are almost interchangeable, and that's basically someone who has no empathy. They do not care if you stub your toe. They do not care if a cat gets run over, or a bomb falls on
a house in Gaza and children are killed.
And they don't care. And I still struggle trying to put my mind in that space, but I've had some interactions with psychopaths, and I've seen how they behave, and it is terrifying. I mean, they are as dangerous as pedophiles who, there's quite a few of them are, it's interchangeable, because you'll see there's a lot of kiddie fiddling that's happening it's being exposed in the British establishment, and there was previous exposés in the American establishment. And I think this is global, because the powers that be shouldn't be, whenever they're going to bring anywhere near close to a lever of power, they need to know that they cannot step out of line. And the easiest thing for that is to have video evidence of them, doing horrible things to children. That'll end a career pretty quick. But you have to look into psychopaths. There's a very good book you should read. It's called Without Conscience. And it's a psychiatrist who was, who studied this phenomenon. These people rule the world, and it's quite simple how it works. If you have no empathy, like say Max and I were competing real estate agents, and I have no empathy, and we are both showing similar houses, and the houses have problems like termites or something. I can say, oh, there's no termites, without having any tell. Whereas Max would have a conscience, and he'd even if he tried saying there was no termites, he would come across as insincere, and it wouldn't work. So having no conscience and being utterly ruthless helps you rise up in the pyramidal structure that you have in industry and business and banking and so on, and politics. And these people tend to drift to the upper levels, and they intermarry, and their offspring are more prone to this disorder, and they rule the planet. The planet is run by psychopaths. It's sad but true. And once you understand that, it makes much more sense how people can decide, oh, let's have a war. Whoever wants to have a war? Nobody wants to have a war. Farmers don't want to have a war. They want to farm, and maybe people want to stay home, raise their children, maybe have a few beers in a weekend, that sort of thing. They don't want to go off and travel halfway around the world and shoot some person they never met. Wars are all pretty much run by started by these
usually funded by the same people, and there's
plenty of evidence for that. Hang on, what do we do for time? Oh, actually, did I run out? Oh, we're pretty close. Hang on, so pause on that.